She never asked for a raise. She just asked for leftovers. He's the CEO of a billion-dollar food company. She's working 2 shifts and still skips dinner. But when he secretly follows her home, the truth he uncovers flips the entire company upside down. That night, long after the last lights in the Haven Foods Corporation building in downtown Atlanta had flickered off, Ethan Caldwell was still in his office on the 20th floor. On his desk sat a stack of reports, quarterly summaries, and a cold espresso. As CEO of one of the largest food corporations in the American South, Ethan had read through thousands of employee submissions over his decade in leadership, complaints about shifts, vacation requests. But one message in the internal inbox made him stop. May I take home a portion of leftover food after my shift? Layla Thompson, line cook, 24 years old. Just one sentence. No exclamation point, no elaboration, no story. But it was that very simplicity that unsettled Ethan. Not because of what it asked, but because of why she had to ask it all. In a company where food was prepared and served every single day, an employee formally requesting to take home leftovers, something about that felt wrong. He opened her personnel file. Layla Thompson, employed for over a year. No vacation taken. Never late. No emergency contact listed. He frowned. Maybe she's just frugal, Ethan told himself. Maybe she's practical. But he knew he was making excuses. There was something about the way she wrote that line, so careful, so quiet, that he couldn't shake. It wasn't a request for extra food. It was a silent plea for help. Ethan stepped to the window, staring out over a city draped in glittering darkness. Numbers, graphs, profit margins. Those were languages he spoke fluently. But right now, none of them explained the feeling tightening in his chest. He glanced at the clock. 10:47 p.m. Layla's shift ended at 11. Without thinking twice, he grabbed his coat, switched off the office light, and stepped into the elevator. One question echoed in his mind. Why would someone like her need to ask for leftovers? The Atlanta night air nipped at his collar, sharp and sobering. As Ethan crossed the back lot of the building, he spotted Layla finishing up her final kitchen wipe down. Her dark hair, loosely tied back, clung to her forehead with sweat. A supervisor approached and handed her a brown paper bag. She nodded, thanked him quietly, and clutched the bag to her chest like it was something precious. She removed her apron, grabbed an old backpack from the hook, and stepped into the street. Ethan didn't know what he was doing. He only knew he had to follow, had to understand the reason behind that one-line message. He started the car, headlights off, keeping just enough distance as she made her way toward the bus stop 2 blocks away. Each step she took seemed to pull him further from the world he knew, and he had no idea that what he was about to witness, even through the glass window of a silent sedan, would forever change the way he saw the world and himself. Ethan stayed back as the old Blue City bus pulled up and Layla climbed on. He wasn't sure what he was chasing. A justification? A way to ease his guilt? Or maybe simply the truth. The bus ride seemed to stretch on forever. The farther it went, the darker the world outside the window became. The lit-up towers of downtown faded into the distance, replaced by flickering streetlights, shuttered storefronts, and rows of rundown homes. Ethan glanced at his watch. 12:22 a.m. Finally, Layla pressed a button to request a stop. Ethan waited a few seconds before steering the car to follow at a cautious distance. She walked briskly past cars parked halfway on the sidewalk, turning into a narrow alley where the streetlights barely cast pale patches of light. He rolled down his window, letting the cold night air sharpen his fading focus, because what he was seeing made less and less sense. Then he saw it, a rusted old trailer tucked between 2 decaying wooden houses. No fence, no yard, just a dusty, bare path leading up to the door. Layla opened it, stepped inside, and a dim yellow light flicked on behind her. Ethan parked about 30 feet away, cut the engine, but kept the interior light half on. He sat there, heart steady but heavy. One question thudded like a drum in his chest. How does a full-time employee of mine live like this? And then something he didn't expect happened. 3 children ran from the corner of the trailer and threw their arms around Layla as she placed a brown paper bag on a small table. Ethan blinked. They couldn't be her children, could they? Maybe younger siblings? An elderly woman with silver hair emerged slowly from behind a faded curtain, her back bent, her movements slow. Layla helped her into a folding chair, the only one in the room. Under the weak light, Ethan could see their faces clearly, worn, weary. No one in that trailer looked like they were living. They were surviving. Layla began dividing the food. 4 plates, not 5. The children ate quickly, like they'd learned to take what they could. The old woman ate slowly, silently. Layla didn't eat. She only cut the food into smaller bites, moved pieces around the plate, smiled and nodded as the kids talked. A lump rose in Ethan's throat. This wasn't frugality. This was sacrifice. She had gone without food, probably more than once, so they could eat. Then the oldest child looked up and asked, "You already ate at work, right?" Ethan watched as Layla's eyes flickered for a split second. Then she forced a smile. "Yeah, I ate already." Ethan turned away, staring into darkness. For the first time in his life, the silence of a young woman shook him to the core. His car sat still. Outside, the night no longer felt cold. It felt hollow, like something had been carved out of him. Ethan remained in the driver's seat, watching through the sliver of light escaping the curtains. The children had finished eating and were now playing some kind of paper-folding game on the worn linoleum floor. The elderly woman now rested her head on a thin pillow, eyes closed. And Layla, she sat at the table, quietly writing something on a small scrap of paper. Ethan pulled out his phone and opened her personnel file again. He scanned through the basics. 25 years old. No list of dependents. No emergency contact. He frowned. That wasn't a clerical oversight. That was isolation. A phone rang from inside the trailer. Layla picked it up, her voice soft and polite. "Hello. Yes, I still don't have enough. I understand, but I just need a few more days. Please." She fell silent for a long moment, then gently placed the phone back on the table, bending over, resting her forehead on her hand. No tears, just a profound exhaustion, as if the weight of the world had been laid on her shoulders one more time. Ethan glanced at his watch. 1:17 a.m. A young boy walked up to Layla, his voice innocent and concerned. "Sis, are you okay?" Layla looked up, her smile thin as tissue paper. "I'm okay, Jay. Haven't you gone to sleep yet?" Jaden. The name jogged Ethan's memory. He recalled a small note in the employee file. Recipient of a district-level STEM scholarship in 7th grade. That boy was Layla's little brother. And the 2 younger kids. Ethan began to piece it together. Right then, Layla turned to the elderly woman, tucked a thin blanket around her, and softly said, "I'll pick up an extra shift tomorrow, Grandma. Just rest, okay? You don't have to worry about anything." Ethan found himself repeating the words under his breath. You don't have to worry about anything. And he understood. Layla was the eldest. Her parents had died in a car accident 3 years ago, a small detail buried in the family status section of her HR file. Since then, she had become the legal guardian of her younger brother Jaden, 11, her twin nieces, 6, children of an older sister who had disappeared when they were little, and her grandmother in her 70s who suffered from severe arthritis. A family bound not just by blood, but by promises and love. Layla had not abandoned anyone. The law didn't require her to raise those children. No one forced her to work 2 shifts a day. But she had chosen to carry the weight of an entire family on her shoulders. Ethan slowly leaned back in his seat. He no longer saw an employee in need of help. He saw a true leader, someone who did the right thing, not for praise or recognition, but out of quiet responsibility. Inside the trailer, the lights finally went out. Ethan remained there, still in the dark, feeling something within him begin to shift, not loudly, but deeply. He sat behind the wheel, unmoving, hands resting on the steering wheel without sensation. The yellow streetlight cast a faded glow across the trailer's rusting metal siding, turning it into something strangely somber. Inside, the family had fallen asleep, but for the first time in years, Ethan Caldwell couldn't bring himself to leave. Back at Haven Foods headquarters, he'd heard dozens of presentations on employee well-being, signed countless documents on budgets, performance, profit margins. But never, not once, had he truly seen. Not like he saw tonight. Not through data, not through reports, but through Layla's eyes as she pushed her plate aside, through the strained smile she gave her little brother, through the way she quietly pulled the blanket over her grandmother sleeping in the kitchen corner. Ethan had always thought of himself as a compassionate CEO. He used to take pride in quarterly retreats, birthday gift cards, and the glossy slogans printed on recruitment brochures. Haven, where employees are family. But sitting here, staring at Layla's torn curtain and worn-out mattress, Ethan felt like a fraud. He remembered a recent meeting where the head of HR proposed increasing meal allowances for back-of-house employees. Ethan had gently pushed back. If we give more, it'll set a bad precedent. People will start expecting too much. That sentence now echoed in his mind like a slap. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A reminder for the 8 a.m. strategy meeting. Ethan didn't open it. Instead, he pulled a small notebook from his coat pocket, flipped past a few blank pages, and began to write, not bullet points, not a to-do list, but things that needed to change. Restructure frontline wage policy. Emergency housing support for employees with dependents. Elder and child care assistance package. New policy. All leftover meals must be packaged and prioritized for registered employees. Launch reality rotation program. Executives required to work one shift in the kitchen each quarter. He didn't know if it would be enough, but he knew he couldn't stay still. The night sky over East Briarwood had begun shifting to a soft, pale blue. Early birds had started calling. Ethan turned on the ignition, not in a rush, not in a haze, just as a man who had reawakened a part of his conscience that power had long since numbed. On the drive home, he didn't play music. He didn't check his phone. His mind held only one image. Layla sitting in that tiny kitchen, untouched food before her, but eyes full of love. And Ethan knew no boardroom could ever teach him that. The next morning, sunlight filtered to the tall glass windows of Haven Foods headquarters, casting a glow across the black suit Ethan Caldwell wore, one he had never brought to the office before. Gone was the bright navy blue. Gone was the slim Silicon Valley tie. Today, he wore the color of mourning, not to bury someone else, but to lay to rest an outdated version of himself. As he walked through the main lobby, Ethan didn't take the executive elevator like he usually did. Instead, he passed through production floor, with a smell of fresh cookies mixed with the sweat of dozens of workers lining the conveyor belts. Surprised eyes followed his every step. The CEO they only knew from end-of-year emails or the occasional internal video. He nodded and smiled at each employee he passed. A few stood up straighter, startled. Some looked away. None of them knew Ethan had spent most of the previous night sitting in his car, haunted by images of a rundown trailer and Layla's forced smile over thin, laughing children. When the door to the executive boardroom swung open, the senior leadership team was already seated for the usual Monday morning meeting. Everyone stood as he entered, but Ethan didn't take his usual seat at the head of the table. Instead, he stood tall, letting his gaze move slowly around the room, pausing at each face that had once clinked glasses of Dom Perignon at the last quarterly celebration, while one of their employees walked more than 2 miles home carrying leftover food. "We have a problem," he began, his voice calm but firm. "And I'm not talking about revenue, expenses, or supply chains." A few exchanged glances, bracing for another market share strategy pitch. "Last week, I read a request to take home leftover food. A polite, humble, and heartbreaking request. And I followed the employee who submitted it home," Ethan said, and the room went still. "She lives in a rundown trailer, sleeps on the floor, works 14-hour days, and still gives her share of food to 3 children and an ailing grandmother." Some leaned back in their chairs. Others remained motionless. "She is our employee, part of this company. And I'm the one who signed off on a paycheck that doesn't let her live with dignity." Ethan pulled out a stack of documents. "I've ordered a full review of our compensation structure. Starting today, Haven Foods will change. No more top-heavy profits built on exhausted labor. We're raising the minimum wage, establishing an emergency assistance program," and he turned to the CFO, who was already swallowing hard. "We're reallocating marketing and entertainment budgets to employee support funds." Someone began to object. "Ethan, this is going to affect quarterly profit. And if you care more about profit than people," he interrupted, "you can hand in your resignation." No one said another word. Ethan walked out of the room and shut the door behind him with a sharp click. For the first time in his years as CEO, he felt like he had truly led. 3 days after that historic meeting, the headquarters of Haven Foods in Atlanta felt like a completely different place. Bulletin boards were updated hourly. End-of-shift meal program now active. All leftover food from each shift will be packaged and distributed free of charge to employees. Another email appeared with a bold subject line: emergency wage increase for all frontline staff. Whispers rippled through the departments. In the bakery plant, news passed from hand to hand like wartime leaflets. "He's lost his mind," muttered a mid-level manager. "We're a business, not a charity." But in the break room at the back, where workers usually ate the cheapest lunch they could afford, the atmosphere felt electric. Layla Thompson had just received an email. Her wages would be adjusted starting next pay cycle, over a 22% increase. But what made her cry wasn't the number. It was the small note at the bottom. "Every full-time employee deserves to live with dignity." Signed, Ethan Caldwell. On Friday morning, the changes were officially introduced during a rare all-hands meeting in the company cafeteria. Ethan stood before nearly 200 employees, microphone in hand, no script, no speech, just the raw honesty in his eyes. "Last week, I saw something I should have seen a long time ago," he began, voice steady and low. "I thought this company was doing well enough. But the truth is, we've been leaving behind the very people working the hardest. I'm here to say that ends now. No one gets left behind anymore." The first clap came from Layla, her hand still dusted in flour. Then, like a chain reaction, the entire room erupted in applause. Ethan bowed his head slightly, but just as he was about to step down, a sharp click echoed through the room. The back door opened. A group of middle managers, most from the supervisory ranks, filed in, faces stiff. At the front stood Craig Milton, director of Midwest Operations, his stance rigid, his voice like steel. "Ethan, we're demanding an emergency meeting. Your recent decision is disrupting the entire operating budget. None of us were consulted." The air seemed to drain from the room. A few employees stepped back, confused. Ethan looked at Craig, not angry, just calm. "Then let's meet, right here." He stepped in front of the room, pulled a chair into the center of the crowd. "If anyone here believes it's acceptable for employees not to have enough to eat, enough to sleep, enough to live, come up and say it. Out loud." Silence. Craig flushed but said nothing. A few managers lowered their heads. Others sat up straighter, as if suddenly realizing which side of history they stood on. And then, from the back of the room, a woman's voice called out, "Has anyone here ever cried because they had to split one dinner roll between 2 kids with nothing else left to eat?" It was Layla. Her voice trembled, but it was clear. "We don't need pity. We need to be heard. And I think today, for the first time, someone is actually listening." Ethan stood, eyes sweeping across both sides of the room, executives and workers alike. This isn't an uprising. It's an awakening. And if I have to choose between the balance sheet and my conscience, I'll choose the second, every time, without hesitation. The room fell silent. And then applause erupted, not from the executives, from those in aprons, in work boots, from the warehouse staff who had stopped by after their shifts. Reform had begun, and this time no one could stop it. News of the company-wide meeting at the Haven Foods cafeteria spread like wildfire. Local media picked up headlines like, "CEO wakes up over a leftover meal." On social media, a short clip of Ethan Caldwell's speech was shared under the hashtags. Hashtag leadership with heart. Hashtag feed the workers. Within 72 hours, national media joined the conversation. CNN published a piece titled, "CEO follows worker home, then changes company policy. Right move or reckless emotion?" Meanwhile, Fortune magazine offered a different take. Heaven Foods, reform starting from the bottom of the pot. But not everyone approved. A closed-door emergency shareholder meeting was held. Some investors expressed concern. Where will this quarter's dividends go if you keep increasing wages with no cap? We're a business, not a relief shelter. Ethan listened to every challenge with a strangely calm demeanor. When it was his turn, he showed a single slide, an image of Layla Thompson and 3 children in a rundown trailer, for pieces of bread laid out on the table. Only 3 of them eaten. "This," he said, "is one of our employees. She works 14 hours a day. She has never once called in sick. And this is her dinner." He paused, then added, voice resolute, "The question isn't whether this reform is worth it. The question is, why did it take us this long to do it?" While the investors debated, Layla was already busy changing her life. Thanks to the unexpected wage increase and the newly launched Heaven Emergency Relief Fund, she was able to move her family into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Maple Ridge, just a 15-minute walk from the plant. Dinner now included vegetables, protein, and most importantly, she finally sat down and ate with them. But it was during a quiet Saturday afternoon, as Layla and her new co-workers prepared food for the Weekend Sharing Kitchen, a new community initiative by the company, that something unexpected happened. A conservative TV reporter, known for attacking social welfare policies, suddenly appeared at the event and shoved a mic toward Layla. "How do you feel about your CEO turning this company into a charity shelter?" Under the lens of the camera, Layla took a small step back, then lifted her head. Her voice wasn't loud, but it rang out clear across the courtyard. "You call helping a mother pretend she's already eaten charity? I call it kindness." The crowd broke into applause. The cameras kept rolling. The reporter bowed his head and walked away without saying another word. The clip, only 42 seconds long, became a turning point. Across social media, it went viral with the caption, "This is Layla, and she just gave us a lesson." Ethan watched the clip over and over in his office. He chuckled softly when Layla gave a small, respectful nod to camera at the end. So composed, so genuine. That weekend, a national business broadcast reported something unexpected. Heaven food stock had ticked upward again. Some investors issued cautious statements. "We'll continue monitoring progress." But the most important ripple came from elsewhere. Over 300 small food companies across the U.S. booked consultations with the Aurora team, seeking to replicate the reform model. "You didn't change the world," the HR director told Ethan that Monday morning, "but you lit a torch so others can see where to go." Ethan only smiled. He looked across the cafeteria, where Layla was helping train a new staff member. That young woman who once slept on a foam pad and skipped dinner every night was now leading others toward a better life. And maybe that was a true reform. The following week, just as things were beginning to settle, an unexpected email landed in Ethan Caldwell's inbox. The sender? National Leadership Forum, the country's most prestigious annual gathering of influential executives. The subject line was simple. Invitation. Opening keynote. This year's theme, Leadership After Fall. Ethan read it 3 times. The organizers were inviting him to New York to speak in front of thousands, investors, CEOs, policymakers, and Ivy League MBA students. His story, from a cold CEO to someone who sparked systemic change, started with a leftover meal, had traveled farther than he imagined. He clicked reply, "I accept, but I'm not coming alone." 3 weeks later, the Lincoln Center auditorium was packed. Front row seats held the heads of multinational corporations, top investment fund managers, and global media outlets. But backstage, Ethan wasn't alone. Layla Thompson stood beside him, adjusting the collar of her younger brother. The same boy who once ate from a divided dinner plate, now dressed in a suit, preparing to walk out beside his sister. As Ethan stepped onto the stage, he opened with, "When they asked me to give this speech, I told them I couldn't tell this story alone, because the real protagonists were the people I used to overlook." The screen behind Ethan lit up. A photo appeared, a small kitchen inside a trailer for plates, but only 3 with food. The entire hall fell silent. "This is Layla," Ethan said. "She didn't ask for a raise. She didn't ask for special treatment. She simply asked to take home some leftover food." He paused. And that was when I realized I wasn't just running a company. I was helping sustain a system I never truly understood. Then, Layla was invited to the stage. It was the first time in her life she had stepped onto a platform like this, broadcast live to the world. She took a deep breath, then said, I used to think maybe I'd spend my whole life working through hunger, just so the people I love could survive. But today, I realize no one should ever trade their dignity just to earn the right to live decently. The first round of applause broke out. Then, the entire auditorium rose to their feet. From banking CEOs to summer interns, a standing ovation for a 26-year-old cafeteria worker. At that very moment, social media exploded with quotes from the speech. Executives and leaders across the country began asking themselves, have I ever had a Layla and never seen her? One major outlet published a headline, Heaven Foods didn't just change its operations. They've changed how we define the role of a CEO. After stepping off the stage, Ethan didn't rush back to the hotel. He and Layla stood side by side, looking out over the bustling avenue below. You think this is a peak? She asked, half joking. Ethan smiled. No, he said. This is just a megaphone. The real work is still in the kitchen, and we haven't finished cooking. Layla nodded, her hand brushing the event badge still hanging from her neck. And for the first time in her life, she felt something clear and powerful in her heart. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was being seen. 6 months later, in a newly renovated workforce center in Southgate, a neighborhood once known only for muddy streets and shuttered warehouses, a modest new sign was raised. The Layla Thompson Employment Support Center, where everyone deserves to be seen. No flashy banners. No grand opening fanfare. But the line outside stretched down the block. Young adults, single mothers, laid-off factory workers, all quietly waiting to register. Because word had spread, this was a place that listened. Inside, Layla was helping a middle-aged woman fill out a job application. Behind her, a wall collage displayed dozens of photos of Heaven Food staff, with bold words written above. No one who works hard should sleep on the floor. A young local reporter stepped forward. Ms. Thompson, she asked, did you ever think you'd become a symbol of hope like this? Layla looked up, her eyes soft and steady. I never dreamed this big, she said. I only dreamed of enough. Enough food, a place to sleep, and the chance to live with dignity. But if someone sees me and believes they deserve a chance to, then that is the real dream come true. At the same time, in a boardroom at Haven Foods headquarters, Ethan Caldwell stood before a group of students, young minds invited to join a new scholarship initiative called Future in Food and Dignity. There were no slides, only one image on the screen. A photo taken on a rainy night, long ago, Layla stepping off a city bus, holding a paper bag of leftovers, her small figure under a flickering street lamp. This, Ethan said, was a moment I woke up. It wasn't a system failure. It was a cost of indifference from people in power like me. He paused. We can't change the world with one speech, but we can change a part of it, starting with the people we once overlooked. He looked out at the students, the future of food, of tech, of education. And if you have the power to help someone, even just one person, please don't wait. Don't wait until you're wealthy. Don't wait until you have more time. Don't wait until everything is perfect. Act today, because maybe, just maybe, that one small act is what someone has been waiting for their whole life. Back in Southgate, the afternoon sunlight streamed to the windows of a new training center. In the corner, a young girl, around 10 years old, scribbled on a blank sheet of paper. As Layla passed by, the girl looked up. Miss Layla, when I grow up, I want to do what you do. You help people. I want to help too. Layla smiled, crouched beside her. You don't have to wait until you grow up. You can start now, even just by sharing half your sandwich with the person next to you. The girl nodded, eyes lighting up, as if, in that moment, every kind and good thing in the world was suddenly within reach. And the story, a story that began with a leftover meal, didn't end with power or profits or applause. It ended with something far more abundant, a quiet, unstoppable belief in human kindness.